The King of All Kings, the story of three wise men from Matthew 2. Far away in the east, three clever men saw a very same star, the star that God had put in the sky when Jesus had been born. They knew it was a sign. A baby king had been born. They had been waiting for this star. They knew it would come. "He's here!" they shouted. "He's here!" And I am sure if you'd been there, you would have heard them laughing and dancing and singing until the sun came up. At dawn, they packed their camels and wrapped the gifts for the baby. They brought their most precious treasures of all, frankincense, gold, and myrrh, specially sparkly, lovely smelling, gleaming things, just right for a king. The three wise men, actually, if you'd met them, you would have thought that they were kings because they were so rich and clever and so important looking, and they set off. They rode their camels across endless deserts, up steep, steep mountains, down into the deep, deep valleys, through raging rivers, over grassy plains, night and day and night for hours that turned into days, that turned into weeks, that turned into months and months, until at last they reached Jerusalem. Jerusalem was by far the most important city for miles around, and as anyone can tell you, that's where a palace would be, and kings are born in palaces. So that's where they went. But they went for a surprise. When they went in to see King Herod, surely he would know where this baby was. But he didn't. In fact, he didn't like the sound of a new king. It made him cross. But he didn't want anyone to be king except him. But Herod's advisors told the three wise men what was written in their books, what God had said about the baby king. So go to Bethlehem. That's where you'll find him. Suddenly, the star they had seen in the east started moving again, showing them the way. So the three wise men followed the star to the big city, along the road into the little town of Bethlehem. They followed the star through the streets of Bethlehem, out of the nice part of town, through the not so nice part of town, into the really not nice at all part of town, through a little dirt track until it stopped right over a little house. But wait, it wasn't a palace, and there weren't any guards or servants or flags or red carpets or trumpets or anything. Did they get it wrong? Or was this what God meant? Sure enough, sitting in that little house, there sitting on his mother's knee, they found him, the baby king. The three men knelt before the little king. They took off their royal rich turbans and gleaming golden crowns. They bowed their noble heads to the ground and gave him their sparkling treasures. The journey that had begun for so many centuries before had led the three wise men here, to a little town, to a little house, to a little child, to the king God that had promised David all those years. But this child was a new kind of king. Though he was the Prince of Heaven, he might have become poor. Though he was a mighty God, he had become a helpless baby. This king hadn't come to be the boss. He had come to be a servant.
They saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Matthew 2:11.
Suddenly, the star they had seen in the east started moving again, showing them the way. So the three wise men followed the star out of the big city, along the road, and into the little town of Bethlehem. They followed the star through the streets of Bethlehem, out of the nice part of town, through the not so nice part of town, into the really not nice at all part of town, down a little dirt track until it stopped right over a little house.
privately called the wise men and learned of them exactly what time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search out exactly concerning the young child. And when ye have found him, bring me word, that I also may come and worship him." And they, having heard the king, went their way, and lo, the star, which they saw in the east, went before them, till it came and stood over where the young child was. And when they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceeding great joy. And they came into the house and saw the young child with Mary his mother. And they fell down and worshipped him, and opening their treasures, they offered unto him gifts, gold and frankincense and myrrh. And being warned of God in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed into their own country another way.
The journey that had begun so many centuries before had led 3 wise men here to a little town, to a little house, to a little child, to the king God had promised David all those years before.